Ducked off low key, yeah, you know me. Kickin' with Tyree, hit it 3 like Kyrie.
So Tyree, my name is Jen Holness. I am a writer, director, and producer. So I actually produce narrative films like a film like 40 Acres, which is up for 5 NAACPs. Next week, I'm going down to LA to see if we win anything. But for documentaries, I write and direct documentaries. So this film, #WhileBlack, is near and dear to my heart. I'm co-directing it with Sidney Fussell. And, it was a project that came to me about 3 years ago. I think Sidney, is a tech journalist, and like he connected the dots of sort of what happens to the people who witness this material. And he was very focused on the tech side, and they were looking for someone to partner with him because this is his first feature film, and I'm a I guess a filmmaker already, and been around a little bit, and I immediately was like, this is a project that I wanted to get attached to. When they asked me, I said yes, and so it's been about 3 years and a little bit, and it's been quite the journey. And so sort of that's kind of like how I became a part of the directing and writing team for #WhileBlack.
I love it. When you first approached this project, what felt the most urgent to you? Was it the footage itself, or was it the aftermath of the people behind the camera?
Well, okay, so I have to tell you that I never actually watched the whole George Floyd video. In fact, I watched maybe about 30 seconds of it prior to coming on board this project. And I was so profoundly impacted that, and I kid you not, it was during COVID, and it was in May. I just had a birthday because I'm born in May. And I remember, and I'd been sick because I'd gotten COVID from Berlin, and I came home and I was sick. And so it was one of the first few days where I was like out and about, and and I was just walking through the empty streets, and it just felt so desolate that I actually fell down on my knees in the middle of the street. Literally, there was no one there, thank God. And I just started crying, and I started crying about how this could happen. What kind of world were we in? Again, pandemic type situation, and that someone could do this to another human being. And the fact that it was a Black man made it feel like everything that I'd grown up feeling, fearing, hating about this culture, all came to fruition through it. So the footage for me was really something that I avoided. Even I knew what obviously I read about it. I mean, I did everything but watch, because I couldn't get myself through it. So for me, my only reticence was that I was going to have to become familiar with this footage. But I wanted to know about the people. The kind of filmmaker I am, I'm very much an emotional, attuned to the individuals in my story. That's the thing I bring often to any kind of a project. And I thought about the fact that Darnella Frazier was 17 years old when she had to witness this. And I had a 17-year-old. Actually, in fact, I have she's now 22 and Darnella is 22. But I have 3 daughters, and one of them is the exact same age. And I could not understand until I met her how you survive that as a 17-year-old kid, because I knew what that was. I mean, I was, I could see what a 17-year-old and what they get to do and how they get to sort of have hope. And they, they're a little bit bitchy, all of these things that make teenagers, but they are living their best lives in some ways, right? And here was this person who had everything stripped away. So for me, it was the ability, having the being given the gift of being able to tell that person's story in some way. And similarly with Diamond, whose story I knew even less. Again, Philando could not watch the footage. but knew exactly what happened to the detail in some ways.
Mhm.
And I wanted to know what happened to her, because in her case, it was, it had happened in 2016, right? So,
Mhm.
and so this was like maybe 6 years later at the time, and I wanted to know, so those were the things that really compelled me.
Uh, like you, I have never watched the George Floyd video, even 5 seconds of it. I've never even tried. It's just traumatic in the way my filmmaker brain works. And once I see it, it's there forever. So I tried. It's like Fruitvale Station. I've seen it once. I'm never seeing it again. But love the movie. But
Mhm.
for you, you had access to these people who, hit record in these life altering moments. What did you learn about the long term like toll of being a witness to something like this?
Well, the truth of the matter is it's everything you think. I was going to say it's a curse of having empathy and a big imagination. And so when you have empathy and you have a big imagination, these things, you don't need to see it in its full. You don't need to revel in like these pains. And so when I met the women, and we also, part of the film is Laura King as well, who was a child when her father was brutally beaten, and it became the first viral content that we know of. Um, I had this thing in my head. It was kind of like, it was something like 5'8", and 30, and it was kind of like the amount of years in between when they saw these things for the first time. And and uh and what I came to realize that it actually never leaves
Hold
you.
on. I'm sorry. I don't know if like a mic moved or something. I'm sorry.
No worries.
It missed a little bit of what you said right there, and I wanted to make sure you got your full point
Oh,
across.
okay. So, like I said, I was nervous and scared and like invigorated to just figure out if it's what I thought, like this trauma thing, my feeling before I met them was that they were going to be people who experienced trauma and it was going to have an impact. And what I came to understand when I met them was it is much worse than I thought. It never leaves you. It determines your choices. It follows you. It is so ingrained in the choices that they've made in their lives. Laura King, even though she was, I think, 7 years old, I believe, when she saw her father being brutally beaten, she is her work is in activism. Her work is in social justice, right? And so that trauma of what she witnessed, what her father went through, it takes with her. Diamond is probably one of the most resilient human beings I've ever met in my life. When I did watch the footage and I just saw the level of calm that she put on the world when her partner was literally shot and dying beside her. I can't even believe anybody could be this strong and resilient. And then you meet her and you realize, like, she is changed forever. She is someone who is like, she's living her life. She's had another child, all of this kind of stuff, but it has shaped who she is. Like, it's intertwined with who she is now. And then Darnella, where the trauma is much closer, you know, much closer. I think when we first met, it was like 3 years after the murder. And it has impacted how she moves in the world, the choices she's made, I mean, it's hard to talk about someone, who has experienced that level of trauma, that has experienced that level of fear, because people, after witnessing what she did, it's actually interesting. When you see her at first, and even when she's recording the video, you hear her, and she's like snapping at the police, and she's like, because as she said, she'd experienced police brutality before, and she just thought, I'm gonna, this is gonna be that, but then you see what happens to her after, the hate that people threw on her, the blame that people threw on her, the fear of the police coming for her, thinking that she wouldn't survive this, having to go into hiding, having to have, men with guns protect her family, and then you expect this person to get out of bed and just be normal and just like, do all the things that a typical teenager is doing. No. So yeah, it's life altering. It is completely life altering. It derails life. It determines life, and it never leaves you.
What responsibility did you feel while revisiting this material that has already caused so much pain? Did you take an approach that I don't want to re-traumatize them, but I want to get their full story out there for them? Or what type of approach did you take?
Well, you really, that is a great question, because Sid and I really were very clear that this could not be like us just re-traumatizing people, just like showing this material in a way that it triggers so badly. Now the reality is we had to find a way in, and the way we found into the story was we told it particularly from Diamond and Darnella's point of view, from the witnesses, from their point of view, from the people, the women who witnessed this. It had to be from their point of view. So with Darnella, it's like the focus is on what she's seeing, what she's hearing, what she's feeling. And that, I think, and we also took pains, for example, like you never see a full out image of, for example, George Floyd being crushed the way he was. You see her like seeing the cops, you see her engaging with the people around her. So it was really, so that was our way in, was to really focus on what they were witnessing, what they were feeling, what they were hearing, and thinking. And with Diamond, because she live streamed all of this, I mean, it literally, like, she's narrating her own like experience of this thing. So I think I think a lot of the footage just showed like him being shot and all this kind of stuff, but we really focused on what Diamond was experiencing. So and the thing is that, right, I really think we grappled with this so much, and some people will say we did a good job, some people say we won't, but there's no way to tell this story without showing what they felt. We just try to do it from the point of view of Black people who understand poverty porn, who understand the desire sometimes to make us like re-experience these things in the most brutal, violent ways, right? That was not our goal and our intention, and I think we have accomplished that. The other thing, seeing what's more recently has happened in Minneapolis, again, but in this case with two white people being the victim of this violence, the reality is that citizen journalists, people putting their bodies on the line to report these stories, it's critical. We cannot shy away from this. We cannot pretend it does not happen or that we want to walk away. And you know what? by the way, it's not in the film, but we talked to people who literally said after Darnella's experience, I would walk away from this. I wouldn't record this, right? Because I know what could happen to me, right? And I know after the election, the impulse is to say, I'm done, right? And I actually feel like we get to say that, and by that, people, I think we do get to say that, but it is also now like this kind of witnessing is important from allies, from the people who have stood back for centuries while we've taken up the mantle and been the front line of this kind of brutality. So, yeah, so it was a great deal of responsibility that we were given, and we were very cognizant of this responsibility. And I hope people will see the film and understand that we really went to great pains not to wallow into the misery, but to really show these people for what they had to experience.
I love that. This documentary also goes into how corporations monetize from viral Black trauma. What conversations did you have about how you're going to frame that critique, and what is something that surprised you that you found out after investigating?
Well, Sid was definitely the tech expert on the film, and so I think I found it a lot. What was really important, and I think it was a conversation that we discovered people were very uncomfortable with, and this was the idea: is that corporations, and a lot of people don't know this, so let's just face it, they monetize this pain. There's algorithms, with Black communities, for example, they send these images and this violence to Black kids, young Black boys, for example, and that generates money for them. So this kind of video, it monetizes. Understood that. What came up though is, okay, this is a capitalist world. Why are the people who have experienced this firsthand, whose material you're feeding off, that you're extracting from, why are they getting nothing out of this? One of the things you realize is that like Facebook, because it was streamed and they own it, first of all, she had no control over or ownership over this material that was literally a life and death moment for her. She has zero control, zero ownership. And Facebook Live, for example, one of the things we pointed out in the film is something that nobody knew about until she live streamed. So, and they make billions of dollars from that product. Why is the person whose content, who helps to generate this, gets nothing? And I think people are uncomfortable with this question. Should people who upload this stuff, whether out of, she uploaded it, by the way, out of surveillance. This is Professor Alyssa Richardson. She talked about surveillance, and it's like, I see you see me, and if I record, this might save my life. This is about me doing something that shows others what's happening to me in the moment. And that surveillance is something that without it, let's face it, without Darnella's video, they would have gotten off. Without the video that Diamond took, this whole thing, Black Lives Matter second wave, it gave a big push behind that. And that wouldn't have happened. But it also, I believe, helped to save her life. Because, at the end of the day, anything could have happened on that road once they realized they killed that man. You know what I'm saying? So, I think the question of monetization that the film puts out there was something that I think made me think about that in a way I'd never thought about it before. And I think some people are going to be uncomfortable with that. And some people will be like, heck yeah, and so what are we to ask for? Another thing that is all in keeping with this point is Matt Mitchell, one of our tech experts, who's brilliant. And I love this. He said, all of these platforms, they're an empty shell. They're empty shells. And it is our content that bring them to life. It's what we put in there that makes them relevant, that makes them exist. If nobody put anything into Instagram, if nobody put anything into Facebook, what would be there? Just empty husks. So why do we get nothing for that? So it's an important question. So I think it's something that does ask, and I think it's an important point to think about.
Yeah, I was having this conversation with Sidney about how they do so many things that we aren't able to critique, like it's almost like its own governing body, like where the stuff we post on here, we don't necessarily own. We don't necessarily own the things that we put on this platform. We don't even have a say of how our things are pushed, promoted, and what happens when there's no one to like govern this, who has so much control over the people who use the app, So in that way, it becomes almost like a censorship of the people who are on the app. They only want you to see what they want you to see. And the moment you become, I don't want to say bigger than a program, or you're growing too fast to where they're not the ones recommending you to other people through their algorithm, that's when they start to step in a little bit and start playing the games. I call it the shadow banning game.
They can, Tyree, they control it to such. I used to wonder about, remember there was a time for Insta, because I got teenage daughters, when everybody used to do the dance moves. I don't know if they still do it. I mean, the Doogie's on right now, but you see everybody let's do the Doogie. Anyways, so the dances that were on, and then you'd always see these white kids doing the dances. Come to realize that obviously, I mean, that was no surprise to me, that time and time again, little black girls were coming up with these dances, but the recommended algorithm recommended the white people, the white kids who perfected it. And those kids were the ones that were getting tens of thousands, tens of millions of views, while the people who actually created that they copied from were getting, it was even being repressed, because the recommended algorithm would be like, oh, well, China is not that interested in black people. We're going to push the white girl, right? White Americans are even more impressed by, white people dancing. So we're going to push you to the, and black Americans, well, they're agnostic, they know they can dance. So you would get like this content that was created by black folks primarily through the purview of white content creators, and so I hope the film gets that conversation going, because it's now up to us to actually ignore the recommending algorithm and find your own thing. So for example, one of the things I've done since Kamala is like my commitment to buying local and black is now like it's 90%, right? And so what that's meant, for example, like even something like yoga. I'm a lazy yoga person, but I would put on like Find Me Yoga or whatever, and then they'll, and it's yoga by Adrienne, who's this very cute little white girl. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Let me just put in black yoga. And I found yoga by Nico Marie. And now I do my yoga with Nico Marie, because I sought out a black content creator in this space. And so what this tells us that we must do that. So I hope the film gets you thinking about what these corporations are doing and get you thinking to some extent about how, what content you're going to absorb and what content you're going to seek out.
Just piggybacking on what you said, I saw a content creator on TikTok talking about how he's a musician. He would just post music tips. And there was another white creator who was taking word for word everything he was saying, and it was getting pushed more than he was. But he was like, he's not even changing the script. He's just literally saying exactly what I'm saying, posting the exact same thing. And then his is getting pushed more than mine is. Why is that fair if I'm the originator and this person is copying what I'm doing? And that's just something that the algorithm forces you to seek out like you said, seek out Black creators, seek out Black people who are doing things versus recommending it to you. And I see it all the time, especially in film, especially in the arts.
Yeah.
Like, we have to be sought out. We're not really recommended. So
exactly.
My next question for you is, do you believe that platforms have a responsibility to the people whose pain drives their engagement?
Absolutely. But without a doubt. But we've seen what's happened to Twitter, X. I'm no longer on X. I'm no longer on X because it takes no responsibility for what it puts out there. And in fact, it also is in the business of putting out hate. It is in the business of controlling the political landscape. So it is putting out materials that it's the opposite of taking responsibility. It's actually using its power to dominate and control our movements, our choices with lies. So, and now we see Ellison, who's taken over TikTok, something that I have also canceled. And I know it's hard for Black people because we love some TikTok, but this is the same guy that when he took over CBS, fired all the Black people, right? Paramount, and there was a study that just recently came out, and I don't have all the numbers right, but like it was about like last year, what percentage of content was led by diverse performers. And so it's not just Black, so it's Asian, it's all of it. So Netflix, 50%. Sony was, I remember, 50%. I think Warner Brothers was like 25%, which is pretty freaking low. And Paramount, which this guy who now is taking over TikTok, you know how much? In 100 movies, zero had a Black or diverse lead in it. So this is numbers that have come out of Hollywood from Paramount, right? And the guy who owns CBS, it's the guy who now owns freaking TikTok and who's trying to own Warner Brothers. So the whole thing about them having a responsibility, I absolutely freaking think that they have a responsibility. But unfortunately, we have people with racist agendas and white supremacy agendas. And I think the only thing Black people can do, and I think brown and Asian people too, or East Asian, I think it's just that we just stop watching. We just putting our content in and we stop watching the content, because as was shown with Jimmy Kimmel, money is what these people care about. And if you vote with your dollars, our voting with our dollars is more powerful than it's ever been to force these guys into taking responsibility for the content they put out there.
There's this film I saw at Sundance. It's called Ghost in the Machine. And it tells you the history of just prompt-based like algorithms and the history of AI and the marketing term that it is, and where it originally starts from in Nazi Germany from their scientists. And it's been something that's been built up over time as this marketing tool of AI, artificial intelligence, to market these obviously companies that are spewing Nazi propaganda and hate, and especially with like when they first let Grok loose, it turned into pretty much Hitler. So with these companies and what they stand for, we got to start looking into the history of what the technology they're trying to put on us is, and especially with, the Oracle it's an AI company, it's a tech company. So we got to look at the history of these, where they're coming from, what the message is, and how are we going to counteract that message with something positive and not hateful, and especially with Paramount and all these news companies that are along with it getting bought out. We have to find a way to counteract whatever is coming next, because it obviously is already happening, like people getting fired, talk shows getting canceled. And I feel like we have to figure out a way. How do we take over our own space? And what that is yet to come. I feel like as Black people, we kind of create things miraculously, not, and it just, the platform becomes wherever we want it to be. So we're all going to have to come together and see what that looks like, because our opportunities are going to be limited if we don't, so
we've got to take ourselves out of those spaces is what I think. And like you said, either create, because the thing is that we are the creative class of the human race. Like, I believe that. I believe so much that is created, has come out of Black imagination. And obviously we're not the only ones, but I think it's a big part of our contribution to this planet. And the thing is that there is, other people have been about extraction. And so what we've got to figure out, how do we, because I don't think we don't focus on extracting what we create. We're just so happy to be like making shit. It's like we're like, wow, this is amazing. This is cool. Like, we got this music, we got these fashions, and we just love reveling in that. But we're not thinking how we monetize. This is where we don't. And that's why I think we get left behind in that in some cases, right? And so what we have to now do, though, is we've got to stop chasing comfort and chase platforms and systems that serve us. That's what we got to chase.
Okay. My last question for you is going to be, if witnessing is unavoidable in the digital age, what does responsible witnessing look like today?
Well, I think responsible witnessing is unfiltered. I think you put it out there and you let the algorithm decide. I think responsible witness is not where you engineer it, fake it. I mean, like, we're in an AI world now, and so much of what we're seeing is fake. It's a lie. And so I think it is essential for witnessing. When I grew up, it was a time when no one would even believe Black people when they said they were being brutalized. They'd be like, "What were you wearing?" It's a Provence. It's like, "Oh, he was wearing a hoodie," and that made him suspect. Really, that's so that was when I grew up. That was it. So now we have this powerful tool, and this tool allows us to witness and to put it out there. And I think that's what we got to do. We just got to be clean with it. It happens, you put it out there, and I also think, and I urge this to all the people who say that they are standing up for social justice, that they're standing up for the people, they're standing up for humanity. Okay. Black people have been on the front lines. Y'all need to step up. That's the thing. And so, because, it's like, I remember doing a project a long time ago about trafficking. And it was like this joke. You put a black man in a car and they will be stopped. So put a black man in a car and have that car go ahead of you and be a white guy or a white woman, and you'll get waved through while they stop the black man. That's how smuggling happened in many cases. Because, you know, no doubt you put us in the front lines and we're going to get the heat, right? And it's time now for other witnesses, now that we have this tool, to step up, be agnostic, put it out there, you know, and see what happens. Like this Renee Good and Preti murder is a perfect example. It's mind-blowing that it's both in Minneapolis. Mind-blowing that this is all Minneapolis. But without those citizen journalists on the ground in those moments, a completely different version of what went down would be what we know. So it is a responsibility. It's like what is that with great responsibilities come, what's the Spider-Man line? With great powers come great responsibilities. This is how I see our phones, these devices. You know, it's great power. You have the power of a supercomputer in your hands, right? Well, you have a great responsibility. Use it wisely.
Thank you for your time. I love talking to you. I wish you luck at the NAACP Awards for 48, because I watched it last year at the Milwaukee Film Festival. So I'm excited to see if you, and proud of you guys for getting so much, you know, honors and award nominations.
Ducked off low key, yeah, you know me. Kick it with Tyree, hit it 3 like Kyrie.